Hey, what's up, guys? So, as many of you know, or in case some of you don't know that haven't looked at my update journal, I've announced that I've been planning on doing some video logs explaining my first impressions of any new episodes that have been released. And this is so that way I can gather myself what my feelings are and get some food for thought from other people's perspectives, so that way I can actually add something more to my reviewing criteria. This is also largely in part to the fact that I'm always falling behind on any episodes that I'm reviewing on. I also want to add that I do appreciate the fact that you guys are willing to be patient at the fact that I am taking my time with my reviews. A lot of you have even said that when it comes to taking your time doing it, the quality comes out better. And I'm glad to see that I have an audience like that. But with that being said, this is just something in which it might be a bit of a good exercise, or maybe not. It's not a guarantee, but this is where I'm giving my first impressions of any episode. And to start off with is the 100th episode of Friendship is Magic, which aired today, or at least at the time when this video was recorded. You know, they're both on the same day. So, to start off with, my feelings on the episode is that the episode had a shit ton of hype for the past couple of weeks. A lot of people have been putting this episode on a big pedestal, and they have been asking me if whether or not I have looked at the trailers and were willing to give my thoughts on the trailers before the airing of the episode. I'm going to come down and say that I did not look at those because after my experience, sorry, I wanted to get that glaring out of the way. After my previous experience of looking at any trailers and what my expectations were, or I'm jumping a little too far ahead, what I looked at and what I thought was going to be, it was me having too many expectations built up. And this is something which Josh Scorcher even mentioned. So at this point, after my experience with episodes that did not live up to my expectations, I am trying to undo that mistake by trying to completely blank my expectations as much as possible. I even tried saying this even before Season 4 aired, and what do you know it, my expectations were over the roof. It happened with Magic Duel, when I thought that there was going to be a big epic battle, when it turned out to be a very silly comedic duel in the episode. You have the Season 4 arc, which I thought was going to be like an ongoing arc throughout the season, and yet it's just very few episodes. And then there's the whole entire fiasco of Equestria Games, which was a Spike episode, and not an episode about the actual games, as the advertisements made it out to be. Just to cut it short, I think that hype is a very dangerous weapon, to me. Because every time hype is built around, when the staff goes around saying, get hyped on this episode, it's going to build many expectations. Now, some people can handle the hype, and they can actually think of something of, okay, we're all looking forward to this, I am willing to see what this episode's willing to offer, whereas some people will just automatically assume that it's going to be a great episode, when in actuality you don't know that until you actually see it. It's a particular mentality that I am stuck under, and sadly, that's something I've been a victim of, and I think it's pretty obvious at this point. So I avoided any trailers or anything as much as I could, and having such blank expectations. So finally, I sat through the episode, and yeah, I was actually quite surprised. So much, in fact, that I'm convinced that the staff was willing to put so much dedication to the fandom's point of view of the background characters. And that's what this whole episode is. Slice of Life centers on a group of characters who are setting up for a big wedding ceremony for both Matilda and Cranky Doodle Donkey, I mean. And what goes on is that things are mistranslated, and that was a thanks to Derpy, and she's involved with Doctor Who, or Who's at this point, and they're making a reference to Doctor Who. We also have Lyra and Bon Bon, and they managed to work out what's canon or whatnot. One of the biggest surprises to me, actually, was when Bon Bon said that she's Agent Sweetie Drops, and I thought that was funny, showing that that's what her actual name was, which is what was canon, and what the fandom interpreted her as, saying that her name was Bon Bon. And this was a bit of a similar case, not in the episode, but something outside of it, about the character Lyra. The fandom called the character Lyra, but the canon name was Heartstrings. And at this point, the staff decided to acknowledge it and just call her Lyra Heartstrings. And this one, they managed to work around with Sweetie Drops or Bon Bon, which turned out to be just the silly nickname that Lyra came up with. And they managed to work that out. I just, like, holy shit. The staff went through so much of putting these characters based on the fandom's interpretation, and the biggest thing that I loved, my favorite moment of the entire episode, was the connections between Vinyl Scratch and Octavia, or at least that's what we interpret the name as. The two of them, they have their own separate ways, but they managed to, like, work together like Octavia's orchestrated work would synchronize with the heavy dubstep beating that Vinyl Scratch had. And by the way, these character names are not even mentioned. They're just there. And they have this big giant bass cannon that turns out to be this giant wagon that somehow managed to lift everybody up that would take them to the town square hall. And in doing so, they do it in a very comedic manner. Like, everything is just one mishap after another mishap after another mishap. And it's just all references to these background characters instead of the main six. And it was weird that we actually got an episode of that, because for a long time, I acknowledged the fact that this is an episode about the main six, not everybody else. And it turned out, this is an episode about everybody else. And holy shit, they actually managed to, work their ways around that. And there's that speech, which kind of gave, helped me gain respect for this character, and that was Mayor Mare. For those who don't know, I have expressed a lot of hatred on Mayor Mare, and that was mostly because of what she said in the last roundup, where she was being a typical money-greedy politician saying, bring back extra money, and that just really ticked me off, just rubbed me the wrong way. And a lot of things that the mayor did, just like, I'd rather not go into too much detail here, but I will say that her ending speech was very, in-depth. When you have these background characters, it adds more life to your story. And that was interesting. It is something, these characters are something to be thankful for the show. If it's just the main six, and they don't do anything about the background characters, the place would have, been deserted or something. I mean, it brings more life knowing that there's a civilization and that there's a lively world going on with these characters involved. And I think that's kind of what the speech was about, and I like that. So to put it short, I simply enjoyed Slice of Life. It's a little biased if I say that it's one of my favorite episodes. In fact, there's a shit ton of episodes this season that are my favorites. We're not even halfway through. Season 5 is spoiling us. Like, oh my god, they are spoiling us so bad. I have this irking feeling that in the later half of Season 5, we're going to lose our shit of what was different from what our interpretation was. Or we can learn to get control of ourselves, because that's kind of what happened back in Season 4. Or if Season 6 happens, don't try to put any expectations up from what happened in Season 5, because that's what happened with me in Season 3 and 2. But I digress. It's one of my favorite episodes. It's mostly for biased reasons. It's not my favorite episode. It's not even in my top 5. Still, my favorite episode so far of Season 5 would have to be, what is that episode called? The Lost Treasure of Griffinstone. And that's because it carried a good narrative around a comeback character and a world building around it that involved the idea behind friendship, but adding some interesting lore that still manages to grab the spirit of what Friendship is Magic was. And that's very difficult to pull off. And it was an Amy Keenan Rogers episode, and to be honest, I think Amy Keenan Rogers deserves a lot more respect than what she currently has. So, anyways, those are my thoughts. I liked Slice of Life. It's in my top 10 practically. I don't even know if I'll be able to do a top 10 on this one. I'm still working on like a top 10 of what my favorite episodes are from each individual seasons, with the exception of Season 3, which I'll have to divide in half, because it was half the amount of the episodes that season. But I digress, once again. Thank you all for watching. Let me know what you think, and hopefully I'll just gather some food for thought and hopefully come up with a very good review, which is going to be a collab with me, Postscript, and Rosie C. Evers. I can't say her name right. I'm sure that she's going to type in the comments section about that one. So anyway, I'll see you all later.